Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14 because we've got a smart man with us, Bill McCain. Welcome, Bill.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yourself.
No. Now, you're in for an important reason because as a reporter, I am snowed all the time by businessmen who tell me the economy is great or the economy is not great, whatever's going on based on their own business needs. You do an economic presentation every year at Warwick. I finally went this year. I'd never been. I apologize for never having been. But I got there. There's a room of 200 people, and they're all mesmerized as you go through our economic data and talk about what's going on in our community without any bias at all. You're giving a real accurate portrayal of what's happening. So I had to have you in to talk about that.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me in. This is the 16th year that we've given the presentation.
And I'm sorry to everyone, because so many of these things you go to, it's a self-serving business thing, but that's not what you're up to at all.
Right, it's facts and figures.
Everyone's writing everything down and listening to what you were saying. So for our viewers, what was your message this year? How are things with our economy? What's going on out there?
Sure. Well, like I said, we've been doing this presentation for 16 years. Our audience is a pretty broad-ranging audience. We have a lot of bankers there, a lot of board of directors come, but we have realtors there, we have government people there. Our audience comes from Wilmington, Delaware to Hampton Roads, Virginia, because we cover all of Delmarva and what's going on with real estate. To kind of jump to a quick summation before we get into some of the specific data, our real estate market is very solid, very stable. 2018 was not quite as busy as 2017. Like one of the interesting stats is in the state of Maryland, for example, every single county except for one sold less residential units in 2018 compared to 2017.
And the irony, that one county was Somerset, which sold more,
right.
But their numbers are so small, it skews the percentages.
That's exactly right. Smaller counties like that, their numbers will fluctuate.
They sell 5 more, and it looks like a big deal.
They don't have a real big pool of data. But all the counties, except for Somerset, had less sales. And your first reaction to that would be, well, the market's slowing down. That's not necessarily the story. One of the biggest contributors to that is lack of inventory. The inventory is much less.
Right.
And we've had very low inventories throughout all our counties. It's actually a national phenomenon. Inventory levels are down. There's just simply less real estate available and to purchase. And as a result of that, it's basic macroeconomics.
Right.
You took macroeconomics and you shift that supply curve along the demand curve, your prices go up. We got less supply, and we have less supply.
Yeah, and in my paper I see realtors not necessarily advertising houses so much, but the need for listings.
Oh yeah, they want listings.
Yeah,
they have buyers. I mean, the demand's still there. Now at the same time, we are seeing a subtle cooling off of the market, but it's subtle. But then you couple that with the lack of inventory, the net result was every county having less sales. But the flip side of that was every county in Maryland saw an increase in the average sale price. So the average sale price, across the state of Maryland increased about 4%. And in our local counties were in that same range.
Right. Now you sit in a really unique position because you're an appraiser. I left that out, but you have an appraisal company. Yeah. So you're dealing with the banks and the realtors and the customers and the landowners. You're really central to all this. And then you also have a role in government as a member of the county council. You see where we are with our income tax receipts and property taxes.
Yes.
So you are really sitting at the center of all this information.
Yeah, I sort of get to see it from both ends.
Right.
In our business, we've been in business. This is our 31st year, and a lot of people don't realize we cover all of Delmarva. So we do more business, ironically, in Delaware than we do Maryland.
Right.
And some of that is the reflection of the immense activity that's going on in eastern Sussex County.
Right.
That's probably the biggest story on Delmarva from a real estate perspective is just the activity in eastern Sussex. When you compare them to the other counties, it's not even fair.
Right.
There's so much activity, but as a result of that, like most of our local banks, for example, our local community banks in our Lower Shore Maryland region, well, they all pretty much have a presence nowadays somewhere in Sussex County because that's where the action is.
Right. Well, I know when I was at the Daily Times toward the end there, right before the recession in 2007, our revenue from developers in Sussex County, because we had weekly newspapers there, plus the Daily, plus the News Journal, was about $1 million a year that they were paying us for ads. The recession hit, $1 million went away. I mean, that really will affect your top line to lose $1 million. But based on your presentation, like you're saying now, Sussex is taking off again.
Well, just to put it in perspective, Sussex County is building a little less than about, like last year, I think they built, it was like around 2,400 homes.
Right.
New homes were built.
That's a lot.
There's almost like 30 new subdivisions.
Right.
I'll put it in perspective, Wycomico County, we're a county of 100,000 plus people, and we built in 2018 149 homes.
Right.
And that was the most that we've built in 10 years.
Right.
Now, we used to build, prior to the housing crisis, we would build 500 or 600 homes a year, all through the 80s and the 90s, right up until about 2006. And then once the housing crisis hit, we literally dropped below 100, and we were floating around about 100 new homes a year for the last decade. And the last 3 years or so, we see a small increase each year, and but you got to have some new construction. You got to replace some of your existing housing. But then we jump over to a Sussex, and they're building 2,500 homes a year, and have been doing that now for the last 7 or 8 years.
And it's like adding a Willards or a Pittsfield to your county every year.
Well, yeah, it's right. Well, they are, and they're community. A lot of these are communities. A lot of these are very large developments, and that's the trend nowadays. You just don't take a field and put a road in with a cul-de-sac and a few houses on both sides anymore. No, the trend is people want they want a community. They want a clubhouse. They want a pool. They want walking trails. They want amenities, and they want homes that are efficient. They want smaller homes. And one of the other interesting phenomenons that we're seeing is it's the first time we've really seen this. The baby boomer generation and the millennials are actually competing for the same type of real estate. They each want that kind of smaller home, low maintenance, high efficiency, and you see that in a lot of these new subdivisions. It's just not retirees coming to Sussex, even though that's the biggest population that's driving the home purchasing. But you also see the millennials; they're now reaching that age where they're home buyers. The front end of the millennials are now reaching that home buying age, and but like I say, they're attracted to the same type of real estate. Right,
and we see that in Salisbury. Salisbury is growing a lot because of the multifamily demands. People want that in building now.
In fact, that's a good point. The biggest story in Salisbury from a residential real estate standpoint is the multifamily housing perspective. One of the slides that we present in the presentation shows a list of the apartments that are being built that are either under construction or are planned or being permitted. And you sum up all those numbers, it's about 1,800 units.
It's huge.
That's either under construction now or getting ready to come to construction here in the next year or so. And that's very significant. We experienced that about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a surge like that.
Right.
And that's kind of typical because you kind of get that big surge and they got to fill the units up.
Right.
And then things kind of slow down for a few years until things kind of get stable. But now we've seen a new demand for multifamily housing.
But I love it because it's one of those things when you're reading it, like you read a slide and then you sort of develop a question and then magically somehow to put that answer on the next page. But what I loved about it this year was the historical perspective where you could see what the recession did to our community,
Yes.
what it did to our country in terms of employment and housing and mortgages. Gosh, that recession was just terrible. And we're working our way out of it, but we're still not there.
Well, it's taken a decade
Yeah,
to crawl out of it. And when it comes to real estate, yeah, we're just now seeing numbers that we saw like pre-housing recession. And so, yeah, we're just kind of getting back to sort of where we were. And to a large degree, we have not gotten back.
right,
In fact, Eastern Shore of Maryland counties have never really gotten back to where they were pre-recession when it comes to real estate. And some of that is a lot of things changed, and they were changing as the recession was sort of coming about when it came to how you develop in Maryland. And I mean, it's very, the name of the game is sewer. You got to have sewer.
right,
And our Eastern Shore of Maryland counties, for the most of the sewer is within the municipalities. Most of the counties don't have a county-wide system. Some have some little pockets in their counties, but it's very limited. As opposed to when you move into Delaware, and I'll take Sussex County as an example. I think it's around 26 to 28 or so sewer districts, and they almost all interconnect. So you'll see a development in Shelbyville, for example, that's 4 miles from town, but it has public sewer.
right,
There's a sewer line running all the way down 54 to that development.
right.
And where we don't have that luxury in your Maryland counties, and without that, it just makes it tough to develop.
Right.
The days of well and septic subdivisions are a thing of the past.
Right. And you made that point as a candidate when you were running for county council. And the others didn't really have the vision for that, but you talked about that a lot. The problems with the east side of Salisbury where we have failing systems. We're going to have to expand the municipal connections, these neighborhoods that have their own little self-plants. You had a lot of ideas on that and recognized that as a problem that the government's going to have to deal with.
Oh, sure. We're trying to stay away from politics.
I understand.
No, but it is part of the real estate question.
Yeah.
If you're going to have,
If you're going to develop, you have to have
if
this.
you're going to develop, you're going to have public sewer. But the big issue I was giving that example of all our growth, and I'll take Wycomico County through the 80s and 90s, we had significant growth. But if you go out Nanticoke Road, for example, and you have numerous subdivisions on both sides of the road, but they're all well and septic subdivisions. Well, the one guarantee is all those septic systems will fail
50 years, they're
at
going to be
some point in
done.
time. Right? They got a 30, 40-year life.
Yeah.
So at some point in time, they have to be replaced. Well, it's not as simple nowadays as just say, you replace it. Well, a lot of the lots that were built on, especially if you go back 40 or 50 years or further, well, there's not enough room anymore to put a new type system, or the lots don't even perk anymore.
Right.
They didn't really perk back then, but you can still build. And so as a result of that, you have to. Well, what do you do about that? Well, and we're already running into that with our older neighborhoods, as you mentioned earlier. So you need the sewer not only for economic development, but it's to address the issue of failing septic systems as we go out into the future. So yeah, it's an issue, and there's the talks are going on. There's alternative ways to do that, and those discussions are being held. So, but the thing is, it takes years to implement.
Right.
If the county, for example, wanted to go into the sewer business and invest into actual sewer plants, well, that would probably be 10 years from now if you started today.
Right.
By the time you do the planning and the designing and the engineering, and then actually the acquisition of land, and then actually the construction, and then run all the sewer along. I mean, it's literally almost an 8 to 10 year process. But there's other alternatives. So we're having those discussions.
The economic development guys have always told me that the employment number is the most important number. That's the one to watch. That's the key barometer. But there's always been something about in me that thinks that the average home price, the appraisal price or the assessment price, whatever that might be, that's a more important number. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you really kind of get back to the basic question of supply and demand. I mean, what can people afford?
Right.
It's buying power. One of my slides, when it talks about one of the key factors for driving real estate is jobs, jobs, jobs.
Right.
And and our employment levels are the best they've been
Really good right now.
in a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They're great.
We might not have great jobs, but people are working.
Well, we have jobs, right?
Yeah.
People are back to work, and but our average price home in Wycomico County is right around $160,000, and so the good news is, I mean, that's very affordable
Right.
for when it comes to real estate. When you look around the state of Maryland, that's one of the most we're one of the most affordable counties.
It's a $900 mortgage in theory.
Give or take,
Yeah.
exactly, right, and you compare that to rent,
Which is about the same.
most
or a
of
little
our
bit
rents
less.
are that or even
Yeah,
higher.
yeah.
Actually, ironically, our rents for our area, for our socioeconomic
They feel high
status,
to me.
they're high. They
Yeah.
are high. They're much higher than the averages. We actually have very high rents in proportion to our economic purchasing power.
Right.
But we have very affordable real estate. So it really makes it a good area to buy real estate. And we're seeing that. I mean, the demand is there. Like I say, but the one product that we lack is that new construction product. And one of the results of that is it's created this huge gap between new construction cost and existing prices of homes, for existing homes.
Right.
And this gap keeps getting bigger because the price of material, to build a house, it's pretty expensive.
Right.
I mean, it's going to cost you to construct a home. I mean, builders will have different price points, but it's pretty challenging to build a home for anything less than probably $140, $150 a square foot.
Right.
You're probably from there on up. But our existing homes, the average per square foot price for an existing home in our county, in Wycomico, is just a little over $100 a square foot. So that's a pretty big gap. And that gap keeps getting wider because our existing price of existing homes is pretty stable. We see a little bit of an increase, 3 or 4% a year, but those prices on material for construction just keep going up.
Right.
So the gap gets wider and wider, and so it makes it hard to. It kind of makes it a challenge, when if you want to build a new house, and most of them are custom built homes.
Right.
Because people want new homes and are willing to spend the dollars to do that. But it is a good opportunity for people in terms of buying existing real estate. We're very affordable.
That's an interesting point because I know my mother lives in West Ocean City, and what you see there, they're all in her neighborhood. They're 50, 60-year-old houses. People are buying the houses for $220, tearing them down and building really nice, really nice houses. But you don't see that the same way in Salisbury. In the Princeton Home Development, Pinehurst, around, people are still they're renovating the houses, but you don't see them tearing houses down, building new, fancier houses.
That's a great observation. Yeah, right. We're a renovation
Right.
county. I mean, people in Salisbury is a renovation city. People, they'll purchase a home and renovate it.
Right.
Areas like West Ocean City that you mentioned. Another great example of that is Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Sure.
Particularly between King Charles and the beach. Any home in there.
All those original houses are gone. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean older homes, but literally the homes sell for over $1 million, and they tear it down.
Right.
And then they come back with a much larger structure and modern structure, but it's a complete restoring of a neighborhood.
It's a location issue.
And, because of location, and and it's the prices of real estate. You reach that point where the land's more valuable than the structure.
Right.
The highest and best use becomes, to raise it and tear it down and start over.
Right.
And but you need a pretty strong market to see that kind of thing. And like I say, we see that in like neighborhoods like Rehoboth, in eastern Sussex, and across the country you see that a lot. If you go to Florida, you go to somewhere like Naples. Oh, that's the whole. People want to build.
Right.
But there's nowhere to build, so they buy existing homes, tear them down, and build new. And so,
Yeah, I keep waiting but the economics aren't there for a developer to go into Princeton Homes and buy up a bunch of those and put new houses in, or Doverdale, someplace like that. Kind of like what they did with Booth Street. Now, of course, that's a community housing situation. Government's heavily involved, so they were able to rebuild that. But it's not happening in the other neighborhoods.
No, but I tell you, eventually you will have to do that to make it work. I mean, that's why you have like community block grants. That's the whole theory behind that. If you can get a whole block,
right?
If you just do one house, that's not going to work. But if you can get a block, and you can do a block of homes at a time, and you can slowly start to change a neighborhood. I've had a great example of that on the Upper Shore was Chestertown. Actually, my undergraduate from Washington College. I mean, that was years ago when I went there, but we do business in areas like that as well, like Kent County on the Upper Shore. But Chestertown years ago, the west side of their downtown was a very blighted area, and they wanted to change that, but they did it through. They started with a community block grant, and they took a whole block, got rid of all the homes, the blighted homes, and built these really kind of neat homes that sort of had a historical look to them that
Right.
matched the downtown
Right.
and so forth. But that was the catalyst. After that, then you had some private developers come in and started buying properties adjacent to that. Well, now that's one of the most popular places
Yeah.
in town, and it's kind of the place to live. But it took, and it takes time. That's the thing about real estate. You can't change it overnight. You mentioned some of our older neighborhoods. It's just not, real estate's not something that you can just say, okay, well, we want to change that, and you go in and it happens like that. And we have some good organizations in our town, like Salisbury Neighborhood Housing. They've done a lot to really kind of bring back some of our older neighborhoods, and and what they do is sort of a version of community block development.
Right.
So
And they'll hold your hand.
right, and they help, right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're celebrating their 25th year as well, which is amazing. But they're also pretty strict. I mean, they let you know like this is going to work or it's not going to work.
They have criteria, right?
Yeah. There's
right.
there's no false promise there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which brings me to the banks. I have to ask about that. I just remember before the recession, any bank would have lent me anything, and I kind of feel like maybe I think that no bank would lend me anything now. But I'm also feeling like maybe that's changing a little bit. Are the banks loosening up, or are they still pretty conservative in what they're doing?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, lending's much different. And I don't want to speak for the banks. I mean, I'm a real estate valuation
Sure.
expert, not a banker. But that's a big part of our business, working with them. And it got very strict, but it's loosened up some, more so in the mortgage industry. For community banks, their challenge is they've sort of been thrown in the same pot with the big banks,
Right.
from a regulatory standpoint, and the expectations of what they do and the criteria they have to abide by. The expectations from the feds are they're going to have you got to do the same thing that the big banks do.
Right.
Well, you have community banks for a reason. They're in your community. They know you. They know your business, and hopefully they can help you, with your real estate needs and your lending needs. And so it's still a challenge if you buy something. It's not an easy process.
They want a lot of paperwork.
They want a lot from you, and a lot of that's just trying to document everything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of documentation and a lot of paperwork. But you just have to persevere through the process.
And one thing I've noticed, and this is off track, but the mystery's gone. So now I can go online and find out right away what I qualify for. My credit report, I never knew what that was till I would go to buy a car.
Right.
And they would go, you got this thing on here from Blockbuster. I do? Yeah, you owe them $6. It's on your credit report. It is? That's how you found out stuff. But now I get my credit report emailed to me all the time when there's any changes.
Well,
I find it's all different now.
You can get your mortgage online.
Yeah.
I mean, the world's definitely changed from that respect. You hear the comparison sometimes from the lending world. They'll say, well, you can buy a car in a day.
Yeah.
Why does it take, a month or 5 weeks or something to process a mortgage? And well, I've never looked at that as a fair comparison.
Right.
For one thing, you're not getting a 30-year
Right.
loan to buy that car. So it's different, and even though some cars nowadays might cost as much as some homes, but it's usually a much bigger investment on the real estate side and for a much longer time. So more scrutiny needs to be given to that process.
How are you feeling about our potential as an entrepreneurial county?
I think good. I think there's some good things going on in Salisbury. Mayor Day is a good cheerleader for our area, for the city of Salisbury, and you see a lot of activity taking place downtown. There's some, I think in this year, you're going to see quite a bit of activity. One of the slides we have in the presentation is and it's from Mayor Day's State of the City, and it's just really a picture of the city limits of Salisbury, but it has all these little dots on it, and all the dots are projects that are either underway or are going to be starting this year. And there's a lot of little dots
It's crazy.
in there, so that's great to see. And it's a variety of things. It's everything from multifamily housing, and but a lot of the older buildings downtown are being there's some really great plans for some of these buildings. Adding multi-stories, making them taller. More commercial as well. So I mean, it's good for our area, and our area is getting younger. It's attracting a younger population. I mean, our demographics are getting younger, and that's a good thing. I mean, so there's a lot of positives. I think your challenge is always to keep that going, because your challenge is, guess what? Everybody else is trying to do that. In fact, tomorrow morning I'm on a flight to Charlotte. My youngest daughter lives in Charlotte, but you go to Charlotte and it's just mind-boggling, the new construction and activity.
Progressive, so progressive.
Yeah, I mean, and when I travel, I go to places like that, or Nashville, or other places of that nature. They're countries. I call them countries within our country,
right?
Because they're so big and so much activity. It's their own economy.
Yeah.
And but even your smaller towns and smaller cities the size of Salisbury, everybody's trying to grow their cities and attract people and attract new business. So you're always competing against that.
Right. You have a good handle on the farm community too.
Yes.
We're doing pretty good right now with our agribusiness.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. In fact, my family, my sister and brother-in-law, they're large farmers on the Upper Shore, but it's a tough business.
Yeah.
I mean, it changes quick.
The weather.
And grain prices. I mean, one of the challenges for our area is, when it comes to real estate, is the cost of agricultural land compared to what your yields are.
Right.
Your rate of return is pretty small.
Right.
I mean, because it's not really a reflection for the most part of what your yield is, because you compete against. You're competing with everybody from recreational buyers to people who just want to buy land to people that want to hunt, and et cetera. So the value is not necessarily determined just by how many bushels of corn you can yield off that piece of property.
Right.
Because if you base it off that, well, our prices would actually be lower. And so it makes it tough on the farm community. And poultry's that's really what drives most of our agriculture somehow or another, related back to poultry.
Right.
In fact, we did in our presentation, we had a whole section on the poultry industry, and because that's sort of changing as we speak. We had a few years ago when I was giving the presentation, we had a gold rush going on when it came to the construction of new poultry houses.
Right.
The growers needed more capacity, so they were giving incentives to build more poultry houses.
Right.
Well, now we've kind of gone reverse. We got too much capacity.
Right.
So now they're trying to slow down. They've extended the time between flocks for a lot of the poultry growers to kind of slow things down a little bit. And you have one of the interesting stats is we actually have fewer people growing chickens now, but we have more pounds of chicken.
Right, exactly.
And we actually have fewer poultry houses, but they're bigger.
Right.
So they're bigger houses growing bigger chickens
Right.
in the same amount of time.
The efficiencies are so much improved.
Oh, the efficiency, right. The efficiencies coupled with technology, produces a bigger, healthier chicken in the same amount of time.
He's Bill McCain, W.R. McCain Associates. What's your website so people can see this PowerPoint?
Right, yeah, they go to www.wrmccain.com. On our website, you can actually, there's a link there with our latest presentation. And I give these presentations multiple times throughout the year. I've got a few coming up here this spring. So we're always updating it. And as we update it, we'll update the data. So it's usually pretty current.
Yeah.
So
the data's fascinating. You can interpret it. You can make your own business decisions. It's a great service that he provides, and I'm just glad to have you on to talk about it.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.